This video is sponsored by Audible, home to the widest selection of digital audiobooks, including bestsellers, new releases, exclusives, and much more. X-Men Apocalypse has now hit most theaters the world over. So as always, what happens here is that we sort through all of the Easter eggs, references, and nods to the X-Men universe, whether it be from the comics, the 90s cartoon, previous X-Men movies, and assorted other properties. So let's get into it, bearing in mind spoilers for all things X-Men. So if you haven't seen it, I was going to say go out and see it, but you know what? You don't have to. Do whatever you want. Maybe you want to play croquet, in which case, go and do that. This isn't a video about croquet, by the way. Hope you aren't expecting anything croquet related, because if so, this will be disappointing to you. Okay, let's start with the previous X-Men movies. Now, this being a sequel, prequel, diverging timeline, something story, I don't know. The X-Men continuity is broken. But regardless, there are a lot of callbacks. The most significant ones include when the Fox logo fades, the X lasts a split second longer, like we got with Days of Future Past. There's a cage match, very reminiscent of how we first meet Wolverine, way back in the year 2000. A revisiting of the Weapon X facility at Alkali Lake, like in X-Men 2 and Wolverine Origins, with a bit of a redesign, where we also see another touching Wolverine Jean Grey moment. Him, though, we'll get back to in a minute. Charles Xavier is seen reading The Once and Future King, a book about the strong ruling over the weak or something. I don't know, I haven't read it. But that's actually the same book Magneto is seen reading when he's imprisoned in X-Men 2. And Apocalypse's original Horsemen are actually played by stunt performers who have worked on previous X-Men films. Let's talk nods to the comics, though. We get hints toward the Dark Phoenix storyline, which we sort of saw in X-Men 3. Bearing in mind the Phoenix Force is actually universal space energy that manifests itself as a fiery phoenix, and over the years has bonded with multiple Marvel characters. If you want a real explanation, I'm just not that guy. Look, it's a magic firebird. How about that? Is that good enough? We also see an early days Danger Room, like we saw in X-Men The Last Stand, complete with Sentinels, as well as, finally, well at least finally in a Bryan Singer X-Men movie, classic X-Men costumes, including comic accurate versions of Cyclops, Nightcrawler, who's also seen wearing his circus outfit, hinting towards his circus backstory, Storm, and Mystique. Professor X is even seen using the same wheelchair from the first X-Men movie, along with similar attire. It's explicitly stated in the film that Quicksilver is Magneto's son, which is true in the comics, or it was. They changed it out of spite because Fox hold the X-Men movie rights. It's a long and boring story. And although it's not explicitly said, there's a good chance that Nightcrawler is the son of Mystique and Azazel, like he traditionally is. Speaking of children though, Magneto loses his daughter, Nina, much like the time he lost his daughter, Anya, and Moira McTaggart mentions that she has a son, who in the comics grows up to be Proteus, an X-Men villain. Though Apocalypse is able to grow in all other X-Men material he's seen in, he chooses only to do it here in a dream sequence. And his monologue about building a better world appears to be ripped straight from the 90s X-Men cartoon episode, Come the Apocalypse.
From the ashes of this world, I will build a better one.
From the ashes of their world, we'll build a better one.
Also a couple of sweet cameos. Pizza Dog, also known as Lucky, who's actually Hawkeye's dog, and Stan Lee and his wife Joan, who was seen when Apocalypse is disarming the world of nuclear weapons. Which also might be a nod to when Superman did it in A Quest for Peace, which it totally isn't, but what if it is? It isn't. Also there's a sly wink towards the fact that most third films in the series are the worst. That's highlighted when the young X-Men are leaving Return of the Jedi. Could be a nod to how everyone hates The Last Stand, or even how Apocalypse is the third entry in this latest X-Men trilogy. If it wasn't blindingly apparent, this movie is set in the 80s, with too many references to mention, but I guess it's worth pointing out the Thriller jacket that Nightcrawler wears, and the song playing during Angel's transformation is, funnily enough, the Four Horsemen from the 1983 Metallica album Kill 'Em All. Coincidentally, the same year that this movie was set. It's probably not a coincidence. We get nods to outside the X-Men universe, including the Star Trek episode Who Mourns for Adonias? I think that's how you say it. That's seen on a TV that's playing when Storm and Apocalypse are in the room. Bryan Singer is actually a huge Star Trek fan, and actually appears briefly in Nemesis, which also happens to star Jonathan Frakes, but more relevantly, Patrick Stewart. Quicksilver is seen wearing a $6 Million Man t-shirt. I mean, there's a whole lot of kind of 80s nostalgia in his room, but that's the one that stands out because that's actually a property that Singer once tried to make into a movie. And the scene at the beginning of the film where some rebels entomb Apocalypse is a reference to the 1955 movie Land of the Pharaohs, which features a similar such scene with 100% less mutants. There are a few mutant cameos though, probably more will be revealed over time, but they include Caliban, who like most characters in the X-Men, was once a horseman, the Blob, previously seen in X-Men Origins Terrible, and of course Wolverine, seen murdering his way out of the Weapon X facility. Which I think is what? The third time we've seen that now? Except this time he's got his sweet-ass 90s gear. Now I know people, including myself, talk about how we're always happy to see comic-accurate costumes, but boy, he looked like a real idiot. You know, all in suspenders, wearing a computer on his belt and his face. What an idiot. Finally, let's talk the post-credits scene. With somebody, potentially Mr. Sinister, an X-Men villain, I mean obviously his name's bloody Mr. Sinister, collecting samples of Wolverine's blood for Essex Corp. Now this could mean any number of things, but the most popular theory is that blood will be used to create X-23, a female clone of Wolverine who may serve as a replacement for Hubert Jackman, seeing as he's leaving the franchise soon. But who knows? Only time will tell. Hey, but speaking of time will tell, but not really. Did you know that Audible is offering people who are watching this a free 30-day trial membership? Just go to audible.com/Sunday and browse the over 250,000 audio programs. That's nearly 250,000, and by nearly I mean it is. It's exactly 250,000. Anyway, if you go there, you can download a title for free and start listening. It's that easy. Now, these programs include the likes of audiobooks, broadcasters, entertainers, magazines, newspapers, and business information providers. Now, what I'd recommend, but obviously you can choose whatever you want, is the book Marvel Comics: The Untold Story, which goes through the massive, decades-long, fascinating history behind Marvel. It's the highs, the crippling lows that nearly ended the company, plus some real insight into who created certain characters, which I actually found really interesting. Because some of them, you know, it's not as clear-cut as you might initially think. Also, and I haven't actually started this one, Marvel's Black Widow Forever Red. Now, apparently we're getting a Black Widow solo movie at some point soon, so I thought this would be a good introduction to that. Apparently it's about her origin, like, and some missions that she goes on. Sounds super cool. Maybe you could get one of those two books, or get whatever you want. Maybe something on croquet, you weird bloody croquet-loving weirdo. Nah, you're right. But did I miss any Easter eggs or references or whatever? Surely. So if you have anything to add, feel free to berate me endlessly on Twitter, or even leave a comment below. And do you have a favorite X-Men Apocalypse Easter egg or reference or whatever? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Also, this Monday on my podcast, The Weekly Planet, we're getting stuck right into X-Men Apocalypse. The good, the bad, the fact that nobody seems to age in this universe, weirdly. And no, losing all your hair at once doesn't count. So, you know, come along to that if you want. But thanks for watching this. I appreciate it. Take care.